in this last video, well done, you've made it to video 15 of our remarketing strategy series here. I wanted to give you a whole bunch of questions and ideas on one page. You print this out, stick it on the wall. I should probably add some branding to it if you're going to do that, but you know me, I'm a little bit lax at that sort of stuff. But this is the planning process. So again, we want this to be a repeatable process that applies to multiple clients so you can do it over and over again. You're going to get better at this over time. So we start by thinking about our goal. You'll notice that's a SMART goal, S-M-A-R-T. I'm not going to read every question out on here, but think about why. What's the purpose of all this? What are we aiming to do? Next are assets. The most important thing on here is what have we got to deal with? How much existing traffic have we got to deal with? And therefore, what's our overall strategy? How cute are we going to get with it? And then how do we break that down? What are the main segments that we're going to go after? Definitely think here too about, do we have any existing information from the client in terms of, excuse me, who are we going to target? What do we know about our avatar? What constraints do we have next? What might be limited? What budget do we have to go with? How does the client feel about a particular CPA or ROAS target? If they say, this has to have a ROAS of 8 or higher, well, then that's going to be a constraint. Then we're going to start right down in the bottom left-hand corner of our remarketing grid, and we're going to be probably a little bit more cautious with our testing. If a client says, I don't really care, more sales is good, I just want to make more sales, let's try and make them at break even, but somewhere around about a ROAS of 2 and up, go for your life, well, then we've got a lot more wiggle room to play with. I always list tracking in here. Who's doing it? How likely is it to break? How often are things changing on the site? It's just good to be aware of things like that, so that might affect maybe just how often you check, for instance, that one-day remarketing list that we talked about before. Always be thinking about risks at the beginning. And this goes with any project, with anything that you do, but just quickly going down this list and thinking about, okay, are there any risks here that maybe need to be mitigated? What are the client's expectations? Are they reasonable? And then we can go, okay, what's our strategy? So a whole bunch of questions there that you can go through in your own time, and you won't use every single one of these every single time, but they're there in case you need them. This is a great question. Why won't this work? So you can go really deep with this, and you may have heard the term pre-mortem before. You've heard the term post-mortem, but a pre-mortem is certainly worth doing on a bigger project, thinking before the project starts of what might go wrong. But specifically with a pre-mortem, you're pretending you're at the end of the project. You're pretending you're a month on, a year on, whatever it might be, and saying, looking back, why didn't this work? So you're assuming that the project failed and asking the question, but you're just doing it before you start, why didn't this work? What went wrong? And brainstorming maybe as a group around that. And that will bring up a whole bunch of ideas that you maybe hadn't thought of before of, oh, wow, yeah. Well, if it's failed, it probably failed because this, and this happened. Oh, great. Well, knowing that that could happen, how do we mitigate that risk? How do we prevent that from happening? How do we get early warning systems in place so that we find out if that looks like it is starting to happen? How can we stop it happening entirely? And then obviously building out your action plan. In the case of the remarketing here, that's probably just a nice simple who, what, when, who's doing what, and building that remarketing grid so that you can show that to the client. And I would never send that just as a document that you send to them and assume that they figure out how to read that. You can either record a Loom video like this or get them on a Zoom call and walk them through that document. This is what we discovered. These are the main segments. This is how many people are in each of these segments. This is why we're doing it this way. This is what we expect to happen. This is what we expect the impact on the business to be. All systems go. Yes, good, great, let's go. And then just thinking through, always good to think through contingencies. What are we going to do if something goes wrong? If we can't get any impressions, if something happens with the code, if those expectations aren't met. Doesn't mean you're going to solve all of those, but just be thinking through a couple of options for each of those of what you might do if things start to go wrong. So I'll combine these 3 documents into one big document for you. I'll give you a link to that so you've got all of the questions, you've got the whole process, as well as that worked example with some GA numbers, so that you can go through and then pull your own numbers out of GA and decide for each client how you might use this strategy. As always, please give me feedback on this. You can either do that personally if you don't want to do that publicly. So facebook.com/Mike Rhodes, or you can email me, mike@websavvy.com.au, or just paste it in the Agency Savvy group. So that's facebook.com/groups/AgencySavvy. I assume if you're watching this, you remember, so just put a post in there. Thank you very much. Speak soon. Bye for now.